aware of this by now because, of course, we've just been mentioning it in the bulletins as well. The UK is officially in a recession. Jeremy Hunt now, what is he going to do about it? Lots of people saying that cutting taxes is the right move. Other people saying increasing taxes is the right move. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves, she's been speaking out as well. Let's listen to her.
I do find it extraordinary that the actual Chancellor of the Exchequer is providing a running commentary on his own budget. Now, I worked at the Bank of England for many years and I've been in politics for a long time now. I have never seen anything like it with a Chancellor giving a running commentary. It is dangerous and it is very misguided. I've made no secret of the fact that I want taxes on working people to be lower, but I've also been really clear, including in the speech today, that I will never make a promise where I can't say where the money is going to come from.
Annunziata, what do you make to what should be the approach now?
I think we need to get the economy growing, and that is the most important job the government has got, and the way to do that is to cut taxes. Also, interest rates need to come back down, that inflation is getting itself under control because so much of it was external anyhow and wasn't fuelled by excess UK demand. We need to re-encourage our own demand, improve our productivity and improve our growth, and tax cuts are the most important way of doing that.
So which tax cuts then?
I think you've got to look at pretty much across the board, that individual incomes really matter for personal consumption, how much each household has to dispose of as they see fit to fuel that side of the economy. But we also want businesses to thrive and hire people so that more people are active in our economy.
So right across the board, tax cuts then, that'll get the country growing and moving. Laurie, do you agree?
I think we need investment.
Right.
And investment can come in different ways. That can come partly financed by taxes. The UK has not invested in its economy sufficiently for decades now. It's something that's happened under governments of different stripes. And we're starting to see the consequences of that all around us. We're seeing it with school buildings that are falling down. We're seeing it with the massive unpaid maintenance bill in the NHS, which now racks up at about £11 billion. And that's acting as a drag on the economy. It's acting as a drag on our growth. It's making us less productive. And so we need to make sure that we're investing. It's easier to cut taxes and sack a nurse today than it is to invest and build a bridge that we can use and get growth from tomorrow.
Reducing taxes is not an immediate translation into reducing government income. It has been shown through example, a cutting corporation tax, that actually when you reduce it, investment from external, non-governmental sources increases and our GDP goes up. And I think there are many ways of benefiting from tax cuts directly. There is a slight lag, but we can afford a lag more than we can to keep this very negative at the moment, but mildly negative at the moment, but very low growth that we have been in now for so long. And if we look at the GDP per capita, which is how each of us actually measure this in our daily lives, it hasn't fallen by the 0.3 the national GDP has. It's fallen by 0.7 in 23. And that is because we are taking on more immigrants who are not being productive than we can cope with. The population is increasing and the pie is shrinking.
So is that fair? Do you agree with what she's saying there?
No, because it doesn't get to the heart of the investment problem that we've got in the country. This is something that there is consensus on. Businesses want more investment.
The way to invest is to bring money
workers.
into the country. You've got to make an attractive place for companies to invest. If you want to increase taxes, to increase investment, as Churchill so famously said, it's like standing in a bucket and trying to pull yourself up by the handle. It doesn't work. You are taking money out of the economy, not putting it in, and that's what we need to do.
So at the moment, we face ourselves in a situation where, because the government isn't investing in the economy, it doesn't mean that we've got investments in the things that will make us more productive as time goes on. The reason why the US, for example, or the EU, or China, all the major wealthiest parts of the world are making massive investments is because investments in things like green technologies, in the infrastructure that we all rely on, in our health and education services, are what's needed to drive economic growth.
Actually, Germany has been doing worse than us in these exact terms. But what we need to do is, yes, have long-term plans, but we need to get the economy going so we can afford to fulfil them.
Am I right in thinking, actually, rather than agreeing with tax cuts, would you go the other way and actually increase some taxes?
In some areas, yeah.
Like what?
I think that you could close the non-dom tax loophole that some parties are talking about. we saw the Prime Minister's tax return, was it last week?
Yeah.
And that showed that the money he's a wealthy guy, fair enough to him. He invests his money, fair enough. The money he then earns back from those investments is taxed much lower than we are taxed for working. And I think that's something that should be looked at.
So just to be clear, I mean, this is not a Rishi Sunak exclusive tax rate. So he is operating under the same tax rules as all of us. But what you're talking about is capital gains being taxed at a different rate, a lower rate, versus, say, for example, PAYE. But then 2 seconds ago, you were saying that you want more investment. So if you want to increase the tax paid on people's returns on those investments, isn't that counterproductive?
It depends where that money is then going. So we're in a situation where, again, let me say it again, schools are crumbling, hospitals are crumbling, and that's acting as a drag.
Is that not a bit of an
the
exaggeration?
economy.
Schools are not in their entirety crumbling, are they? You might have a corridor there that's got a bit of rack that's been dealt with, or a classroom there or something. Schools in their entirety are not crumbling, are they? Unless I've missed that.
OK, fine. There have been significant cuts to budgets of major public services, which has mean there's less kit. Buildings are in some public services decrepit, and we've had underinvestment in the number of staff. And what that has meant is the key services that keep our society going, that make sure we have productive and healthy workers and so on, are not working very well.
Our schools, universities and NHS has done nothing but increase, actually, overall.
But does that kept up with population growth?
What we really want when we look at the capital gains, I think it is the most efficient allocation of capital. You want money to be going to the things that are going to be productive for our national economy. And the more you tax that, the more reluctant people are to move their money from things that are dragging to things that are producing. And we need to reduce those taxes so that the money can move to where they can help most.
So there's a huge amount of money that's bound up, private money, that could be invested in this country that's not being unlocked because businesses and investors look at this country and they say, things are not going so well. They've clearly underinvested. The public service is in trouble. Their infrastructure is outdated. Some of their trains don't work on time. And if we invested more in those things, it would unlock more of these private investments.
If we made London a city people could move around, it would be a good start. But our mayor seems to be 100% determined to make it impossible. And every single day he does something ridiculous, like introduce a new charge or rename all the train lines, when what we actually need to do is have vehicles and people being able to move freely around our city. We need to do that across the country. I completely agree. There are elements that need investment. But we need private money, external money coming into this country and being productive to do so.
Something that the UK has not been doing well economically for a while now. And taxes have been raised, they've been lowered, corporation tax has been lowered. It's been very consistent. We've tried those things. The consistent thing throughout is that investment has been low. And the investment is lower than our peer countries.
It increased,
investment is lower than people in the G7.
And they put corporation tax back up. And the same with capital gains. And actually, they needed to keep to the policy. The short-termism doesn't work. Investors need a
exactly. We need investment.
Economy, knowing what direction it's heading in order to trust their investment.
Reductions in corporation tax in the past have proven that companies are not sitting there waiting and being like, wait a minute, as soon as the UK reduces corporation tax by a slither of percentage, we will suddenly crown in investment. That's not the case. It's investment in our key infrastructure, the things that enable businesses to come along and say, this is a positive environment to invest in.
If businesses had the confidence, as they have done in Ireland, that we would have a consistently competitive, internationally competitive, lower rate, they would invest here.
You could possibly argue, on this recession point of view, you could possibly argue that actually economically it's not hugely significant. People will say that it's quite mild, it'll be sorted out quite quickly. But people would argue it's more politically significant. Of course, Rishi Sunak, one of his pledges, one of his 5, is about growing the economy. And there's no real clarity on what measure we're actually going to judge him on that. The UK economy in 2023 did actually grow. I think it was about 0.1% or something. So it did actually grow over that year. But anyway, do you think it's more politically significant?
It's a technical recession, so it's 2 quarters and that's all it measures. So yes, over the year it was a different picture. I think we want to focus on what households are actually feeling like in this country, and that is not the national GDP, which is being inflated mainly through immigration. It is what we are getting per household, per person, how you look at that as your family unit. And that has been shrinking, and over 2023 it fell by 0.7%. That's what Rishi Sunak needs to get to grips with, and why he desperately needs to encourage growth, by introducing tax cuts and encouraging the Bank of England to reduce interest rates.
Yeah, I think that latter one is a key point as well. What do you think in terms of the political significance of it all?
I agree that it's more of a political thing, and that I strongly agree with Annunziata that we need to focus on the stagnation that we've seen over the longer term. And again, we have not invested adequately in the high growth, high productivity sectors in this country. We've had lots of inconsistency from government. Businesses need consistent, predictable policy, and the government has flip-flopped all over the place when it's come to the scant investments that it has made. And that's been very damaging for businesses investing in the really productive, wealth-creating
But everyone's
industries.
flip-flopping. We had the other day Keir Starmer and his pledge, 28 billion or whatever it was, getting reduced. There's flip-flops everywhere.
Yeah, and let's hope that if they get in government, they are a bit more consistent and bold with this. And I think that boldness around investment is something that there would be a huge welcome reception from markets and businesses. They want this investment to unlock their own.
But it was Gordon Brown who changed the definition of investment from being investment in new projects into beginning new things to meaning maintenance. That's not investment. That's what you have to pay to keep the country going.
Yeah, and the way that the government thinks about accounting is a serious problem. The way that we need to, like any business does, you need to understand that investments are highly productive things that you don't want to cut. But politically, it's much easier to cut them because no one notices when you cut a training bursary for nurses today or the maintenance budget for a hospital. But later, when a pandemic comes, there aren't enough nurses, there aren't enough beds, then you notice. So politically, it's easier to cut in the moment, and this is what Hunt may do. But it will always come back to haunt us. And right now, we have a stagnant economy, and that's it coming back to haunt us.
Well, there you go. What do you make to it all at home? And speaking about cuts, you'll be familiar